Hey everybody, how's it going? Dan Shinder here on Drum Talk TV again, coming to you from not Phoenix, 100 miles from Phoenix, up in the mountains, with Cindy Blackman Santana, who's chilling at home in between tour dates. We'll talk about that. Chime in the comments. Tell us where you're watching from, whether it's live or on the archive. Let us know if you have favorite works by the millions of people that not Cindy's just played for, but played with. You've played with so many people. I can't wait to get into that. So if you have a favorite work, if you have questions, Cindy, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you, thank you. And thanks for having me back again. It's always wonderful to chat with you. How are
Thank
you
you.
doing?
Really well, thanks. It's spring up here in the mountains. It's beautiful. The flowers are exploding. I love it. It's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about the first leg of the tour that you just got back from and what the plans are moving forward. I'm sure people want to check that out if they haven't yet.
Yeah, it was an awesome tour. This was just with Santana. There was no other band, so it was just us. And this was the first tour that we've done since 2020 shutdowns.
Yeah.
We've done some gigs, like we've played House of Blues, but we haven't done any actual
Did
tours.
a couple bar mitzvahs, a wedding.
Yeah, really special weddings. But yeah, this was the first actual tour, and it was really, really amazing. It was amazing um, to play with the band and to just play music again. Just the feeling is exhilarating. And it was also amazing to connect with people on that level,
Yeah.
because you could tell that people were really, really appreciative of being able to go to a concert, you know, and
Yeah.
to open up and have some fun and enjoy music. I mean, music, as you know, I'm preaching to the choir. Music is such a spiritual way to communicate, and it's got such a magical vibration that it can just lift you up from wherever you are and make you feel, a million times better, no matter how good you felt before you were
Yeah.
listening to it. You
Oh
know,
yeah. It's
um,
a it's an experience of elevation in so many ways, in so many layers.
yeah, absolutely,
And you
absolutely.
mentioned getting back to being with people, and I'm sure like when you're in the business, there's two aspects to your business. There's the creative process, three aspects, 12, but let's cover three. There's a creative aspect where you're creating. And then there's the production aspect where you go in the studio, you do your thing, you make the product. And then there's getting out and playing. And when you get out and you're in the business of being around people, I'm sure you all probably started to feel that buzz, even just with venue staff doing a sound check, with catering people, just like being around people that you're not around in your neighborhood for 2 years during the lockdown. That must have been a whole different new thing on its own, right?
Oh, it was. It was incredible. I tell you, I started to feel the buzz when I was packing. So before I
Oh,
left the house, I was feeling the buzz just packing for tour because that's a whole event in itself, packing for the tour. And then, getting on the flight and getting there to the hotel. It was just, oh, so exciting. And, it's needed because we need to communicate in this way because
right.
it's like praying, so we need this level of communication, not just for ourselves, but we need to do it, for all of humanity. We need that upliftment,
Yeah.
we need to
And
feel
I
that. And
think
so
uh, that's such a good point because the first 6 or 9 months of the pandemic, I saw all over social media, of course, people who gig professionally, people who gig very casually. Their biggest angst was that a lot of people lost out on a lot of money because they weren't working and all of that. And then it kind of went over that arc because everything went on for so long, went over that arc. And then it was just like, I just want to get out and play with other musicians. But the whole other side of that was the aspect of people not being able to go to those experiences as the concert goer and experience, like you said, that prayer circle, that really what's such a religious slash spiritual event. And now everything's like everywhere, and it's great. It's hard to almost decide what do we go do. because it's just unleashing now, and it's great. I'm hoping it really changes the whole mental attitude of what's going on. As you know, in the news, there's just all this crazy stuff going on. And what is it? Is it that people are that uptight from the last 2 years? Is it something else? I'm hoping whatever it is, a lot of it gets relieved by people like you getting out and playing for people, and people to be able to live that experience again.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a bit of all of the above, you know. So the release is needed, the communication is needed, the creative inspiration is needed. You know, we're creative beings. We're made by the head creator of everything, and we're part of that. So that means creativity is in our DNA. It's in our whole makeup. So, you know, when we're shut off from that,
Yeah.
we're shut off from a big part of ourselves. You know?
Absolutely.
So I think, you know, that's one of the things that really draws people, you know, to this kind of endeavor, because that's what it's offering and that's what it's for, you know.
Right.
Inspire you, you know, to inspire you in here, up here, you know, to inspire you in every way, you know.
Yeah, and like you said, we're innately creative. And to those who say, oh, I'm not creative, I can't paint, I can't draw, I don't have rhythm, you just haven't discovered it yet. But it truly, like you said, Cindy, it's in our DNA, whether we have found it or it's woken up yet or not, it's there.
Right, and everybody's piece of the puzzle could be something different.
Yeah.
You know, everybody's piece of the puzzle is not going to be the same. You know,
Exactly.
this person is not going to create in the same way that that person does. You know, so and that's fine. It's not supposed to be the same. There's supposed to be differences. That's why, you know, we are one race with race variance.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the way we are as creative beings, as creative spirits, you know. So it all comes in you know, many different forms. My brother, at one point, he says, "Oh, I don't play anything. You know, all you girls, you play stuff." My older sister sang. My mom played the violin. My younger sister played guitar, and she still does guitar and piano, and she's a wonderful singer. Me, obviously, on the drums, and my brother was like, I don't play anything. And I said, yeah, but you're important. He says, well, why? And I said, because you're a great listener. He and my dad were both great listeners, you know.
Ooh, what a quality.
And I said, you know, we need you. So you're just as important, because, you know, without you, who are we playing for? You know, who's going to listen to what we're doing? We need you. You are important. So everybody's piece of the puzzle, as I was saying before, you know, everybody's piece is a little bit different, but, you know, they're all important.
That's great. It reminds me, I was in a circle of, I don't know, about 5 people at a NAMM show years ago. And there was a guy I knew with me who owned a business who was displaying there. And he was making introductions. And he said, so yeah, Dan's a drummer. This guy's a saxophone player. He's a bassist. She plays guitar. And then someone says, well, Doug, what do you play? And I said, Doug plays the cash register. That's his instrument. We all have a piece of the puzzle as part of the big machine. So when the decision was made, oh, we're going out on the road, we're going on tour, what was the process like deciding what the set list was going to be? Because after not being out on the road for so long, was that easy? Was it a snap together process, or was it like, okay, we really got to think this through more than ever because we haven't done this and people are really going to be eager to see it? Like, what was that like?
Well, that's basically 99% or 100% Carlos.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, he's up at night writing out a new set list or making a change to this arrangement or that. You know, he's thinking about that all the time. He's always thinking about the best way to present something to people, you know, the best way for, you know, people to enjoy it or get it, you know, the best flow of the set. And he's got so many hits that it's actually not a difficult task, I think, you know.
Right.
But for him, I mean, in terms of selection, you know,
Yeah.
because there's a lot to choose from, you know. Yeah, but he puts a lot of time and pride and energy into making sure that each song follows the previous in a way that is cohesive, that has flow, that has energy, and that has meaning. You know, so he basically puts the sets together, and then sometimes he'll say, well, you know, what do you guys think about this little island here? You know, what should we put? And then everybody will send in a suggestion, you know, or some suggestions or whatever. You know, he's good with including people as well. You know, so everybody will send in a suggestion, or whoever wants to send in will send in a suggestion, and then he'll choose from those suggestions. But really, that's mostly just him, you know, saying, I like this and this and this. I think this is going to be great. This flows. He's a very good DJ.
Yeah, and you know, with over 50 years of a catalog, it's and like you said, lots of hits. I don't think there's a way to screw it up, to be honest with you.
I don't think there is either. I think that it's, you know, it's a pretty, it's like a player piano, you know.
Yeah.
It's just
With
gonna
a
go.
never-ending scroll.
Never-ending scroll. It's going to do its thing. You know, you can just, you know how they say some tours are done with just taking darts and throwing them on a wall, and that's where you're going. Well, you can probably pretty much do that with his songs.
That's awesome.
You know, and it's partly, you know, a lot of that too is because of the heart and soul that goes into each song. You know, because thinking about, you know, a dartboard, let's say you did that. You just threw a bunch of songs on a board and you said, okay, and there happened to be two ballads back to back. You know, most people don't play two ballads back to back, but with the kind of heart that he puts into a song and the kind of energy and attention that he pays to each song and each note, you could do two ballads back to back.
Right. With getting ready to go to Las Vegas for a residency for a couple weeks and then the U.S. tour, can you please run through the instrumentation and the members of who we're all going to see on tour in the
Oh
band?
yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad you asked that because each of the band members is really dedicated and really great in their own way and in their own right. So it's always wonderful to acknowledge that. So starting with the rhythm section, because I'm in the rhythm section.
Why not? The
We
part
got-
everyone really goes to see.
Paoli Mejia is on my left side. He's the conguero, and he's phenomenal. You know, he can sing. He doesn't sing on this gig, but he can. You know, he does his own videos, his own recordings. You know, and he's just an amazing player. On my right is another incredible percussionist, and that's Carl Perazzo, and Peraza, and he is just. He's a fire plug. You know, there's nothing that stops that dude. I mean, he plays timbales like nobody I've ever seen. You know, he plays congas like nobody I've ever seen. He handles all the sounds with the little percussive things that Carlos wants.
Yeah.
You know, for those kind of sections, he handles all that. And he plays djembe. You know, he's just amazing. He does some singing on the gig as well. He's incredible. So you got Paoli and Carl. And then on keyboards, you have David K. Matthews.
The recent birthday boy.
With the recent birthday boy. Yeah, we had a lot of birthdays on this last tour, actually. It was
Really?
funny. And so, yeah, we had about 4, maybe 5 birthdays
Oh, wow.
on this last tour. There were a lot. But David K. Matthews, yeah, he's really great too because he's so well studied. You know, he's checked out all the piano players. You know, my favorite, Herbie, of course, McCoy. You know, just all the cats. He played with Etta James for a long time, so he has kind of
Oh,
a great sensibility in terms of following and complementing melody. So he's really good with that. He's a great soloist. So there's David, and he's on my right. Over to my left, another part of the rhythm section is Tommy Anthony, who's a guitar player, great guitar player, but he's also a great singer. he's just a very talented individual. He's a great writer. I've heard some of his projects, and he comes up with some amazing music. So Tommy is a very consistent player. He's another great teammate, because he's a team guy. He's all for the team. And so he's a great person to play with. Then when you step up front, we've got Ray Green, who is a trombone player, great trombone player, but great singer. I think I don't know which is his first instrument. I'm going to say singing, but that's just a guess. I have no idea because he plays them both so well. He's an amazing singer, amazing entertainer. He really, puts his heart and soul into the notes.
You know what I've noticed, Cindy? I'm sorry. I've noticed the horn players I've ever played with who are also singers are great singers because their instrument, they need to work with breath and breathing and diaphragm. Yes. It always seems to go hand in hand that they're great at both.
Yeah. He does not break the mold. He is as well.
That's great.
So you've got him, and then along with him in the front, another incredible person, Andy Vargas, who is an amazing singer. He's got a beautiful voice, and he's very adaptable. No matter what Carlos asks him to sing, he goes there. Some songs that were sung by women, he can go there. Not that he's sounding like a woman, but he can make the inflections, and the song comes off the way that it should. So he's really talented. He's a great rapper as well.
Wow.
So he does a lot of rapping. Andy, I invited him on my last record, Give the Drummer Some. So he's on some tracks, and we're already working on something for my next record as well, Andy and I. So I really respect Andy. He's really great. He's an amazing lyricist. So he can really write. And he adds a lot to the band because he's got a great energy. And then last but not least, our incredible band leader. You have Carlos, who's sitting right over there, kind of catty corner to my right. And this is from my stage perspective. Yeah. And Carlos just is all of the parts of the pie. He's all the pieces. He's the foundation. He's the base. He's the middle. He's the top. He's the main impetus. He's got so much energy, excuse me, and love for the music that he just puts all of that into everything, and it really shows. So that whole pie is really happening.
That's great. Thanks for sharing that info, folks. You have so much to look forward to. And folks, I'm looking at our show, folks. I'm not watching the Flintstones like when I interviewed Bill Bruford last week, because who cares what he has to say, right? Hello from Mississippi. Thanks much for this conversation. That's from Laura All Hands. Thank you, Laura. Donald Ross says, I wish I could go on tour. I love playing and love music. That's from Donald Ross. Great. Let us know, folks, if you're watching us, where you're watching from, and if you have questions or a favorite work by Cindy that you want to cite. Yeah, absolutely. And I'll relay that to Cindy. We're also going to talk about the tour dates. They're going to be at the House of Blues in Las Vegas, pretty much May 17th through May 29th. My wife and I are going to try and get out there. 7 of our 11 kids live out there, but we're not telling them that we're coming.
7 of 11. Okay.
Yeah, that was my parents' anniversary too. I just realized that. Interesting.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I've been talking for the last hour and a half.
Yeah, that's okay.
Because I had another interview before, so
yeah, no worries. No worries
get
at
some
all.
Water.
Yeah, and then after the Vegas residency, you roll out for 2 or 3 months around the U.S. What does that look like?
It's going to be a great summer tour.
Great.
It's with Santana and Earth, Wind & Fire. So that's going to be really amazing to tour with Earth, Wind & Fire. They're so dynamic, and they have so many incredible songs, amazing messages. I grew up listening to them.
Yeah,
So
same
this will
here.
be fantastic. So we toured all summer. We're going to take a short little break um, for a couple of weeks in July, and then we come back and hit it again. So we'll be around the U.S.
Great.
and Canada all summer.
Great. Let's talk drumming. You're in a really awesome position playing with two percussionists. Can you talk about that? And, I've always looked at it as if no other band members play, or if just a drummer and a couple percussionists or even a couple drum set players get together, there's an orchestration element that goes on there that everyone really needs to treat the music like and be aware of. Talk about that dynamic working with the other two guys and how that works with the music and on your own as a unit.
It's really incredible because everybody really listens to each other, and that's the main thing. Everybody's listening constantly. So there's always the thought of complimenting what this person's doing or what that person's doing. And sometimes complimenting is not to play anything.
Hmm.
Sometimes complimenting is playing something. But everybody's really keying in and listening. And the two of them, they have incredible tones and sounds, and they're so great at what they do. It's just a big inspiration. They're very knowledgeable in terms of the rhythms that they play. Their technique is incredible. So you can't come lacking. You have to come prepared. To come and hitting, because they're going to come hitting.
Yeah.
So it's a wonderful push. I love it. It's an inspiration, because I like playing with people who have the kind of pride where they're coming ready. You
Yeah.
know, they're coming with both guns blazing. So
Yeah.
I love that energy.
Plus,
And
it's always great to play with other drummers and percussionists that have completely different backgrounds in music and influences and styles and learning and, like you said, sounds, because it's just like playing in a three-piece rock band, let's say. You could be a drummer and play with this guitar player and this bass player, and you'll play completely differently with them than you might with these two of the same instruments of whole different. It's the same when you play with other drummers and percussionists. I think that's really an important experience for drummers and percussionists to have. I think it forces us to look at our own instrument a little bit differently when we're not the only one banging on stuff. I think it hopefully makes us more aware and be more sensitive to the music and know when to, like you say, lay back or even sit out.
yeah, it does, and it is. The experience, um, it's wonderful, because no matter how intense things get, to keep that intensity musical
Right.
is wonderful, and everybody does that. No matter what, it's always musical.
Yeah.
And so it's never like a frazzled, just it's never that.
Bunch of gear falling down the stairs.
It's never that. And if it's falling, trust me, it's falling with some kind of purpose. you
Yeah.
know. But yeah, it's wonderful because they're so great, and like I said, they come ready, and I like that attitude. I love that.
That's great. Other than getting out and playing, or staying in for that matter, and playing with other drummers and percussionists, what are one, two, or three things that you may have discovered or noticed that maybe many drummers aren't doing enough of, or aren't doing at all to help improve their playing and kind of expand their horizons and become better musicians?
I think a lot of people don't study.
And when you say study, do you mean listening to specific or different music, or sitting with charts and practicing rudiments and sight reading? What kind of study works into that?
I will elaborate. I don't think I think a lot of people don't study the masters,
Mm,
you know, and if you don't know where you came from, how do you know where you're going?
yeah.
I don't see how that can happen. Um, and so I think it's really important to do that. And you don't have to necessarily play like this person or that person, but I think you have to understand where that person came from. You have to learn things about that, because that helps build your vocabulary. It helps build your base. And studying charts is fine. Studying rudiments is very important because that makes up your language. Makes up the language of the drums. It's like if you never studied a scale and you play a melodic instrument, you're going to be very limited in what you can play on top of this chord or that chord, because you're not going to know what notes to choose.
Right.
So I think that studying the masters is important. Studying the vocabulary of the drums, which is the rudiments. Learning how to actually get a sound out of your drums probably supersedes all of that, because if you don't get a tone out of your drums, if you don't learn how to actually play the drums, it's cool to want to know how to play fast. It's cool to want to know how to play this meter or that meter. But if you don't actually know how to sit down and get a sound out of the drums, how to actually play the drums, how to hit the drums, then that's certainly going to limit your level.
Yeah, I love that, really understanding how your instrument works, and that a cymbal has so many different, whether it's a ride, crash, there's just so many zones, so many different ways to hit those different zones that turn that one instrument into 15. If you know all these different, and I think a lot of drummers don't take time to do that, let alone learn the different spots of a drum, of the same drum, to get different sounds, deader towards the middle and a bit more reverberation towards the outside. And we really need to spend time knowing our instrument.
Yeah.
Just like a singer does with their voice. Hey, go figure.
Exactly. I mean, we're singing, we're just singing in a different way. So when you think of it in that term, in that respect, and I changed the word to that respect, because we need to respect our chair. We need to respect, what the drums are. If we think of it in that way, then it automatically starts to become more musical. If you think of yourself as singing when you're playing, it's not banging, and I hate it when people say you were banging. No, I'm not banging.
Right.
I'm not banging. I mean, some people are banging, but even when I'm playing really heavy, I'm doing it for the requirement of what the music needs or what I feel needs to happen at that moment. But I don't consider that banging. I consider that, giving the music, the force that it needs, or the energy that it needs, or the sound that it needs, or the tone that it needs, or the vibration that it needs for those moments, and for whatever that particular music is. And each music has its own need.
Absolutely. Thanks for sharing that wisdom. Let's look at some comments or questions. Oh, this is a great question. Laura, on what we were talking about, Laura Allhand says, what was one of the most challenging techniques to learn for you, Cindy?
One of the most challenging techniques to learn. I think really to perfect my right hand in the way that I wanted, the technique, that I wanted to play on the ride cymbal. That was a big challenge.
And was that in the area of jazz, like getting that swing feel down?
Absolutely.
Or something else? Yeah.
Absolutely. Getting the tone, the inflection, playing it in a way that keeps it in the manner that I like the ride to be, which is, big but lean, precise and tight but still swinging. That's my particular taste in a ride. Other people have other desires for their ride cymbal, but for me, those are some of mine. And that was probably the biggest one that I'm actually still trying to perfect because I wanted to get better and better and better.
Right. That's great. And
Great
where did,
question.
yeah, thank you, Laura. Tom Holzclaw says he will see you in Denver in June. So he's got your
All right.
itinerary. He's got to post it right there.
All right, Tom. We'll see you there.
Yeah, which is great. Talking about sound and getting the sound out of your drums, I know it depends on the session, of the recording session, but if we were to kind of look at it apples to apples, recording with one artist, whether it's Santana or someone else, and then playing live with that same artist and playing a lot of the same material, do you use the same gear live to express that as you do to record it? Or do you use different gear, like maybe different hi-hats or different cymbals or different drum heads or size drums for the recording versus what you do when you perform live?
Every time I've recorded with Carlos and we've done several albums together, I use the same gear that I use live.
Oh, great.
Yeah, I use the same thing. And you know, that's probably one of the reasons why when we play stuff live, uh, and he does the same thing. He uses the same the same gear. He's not, taking out a recording guitar. He's using the stuff that he plays live.
Yeah,
You know,
I love that.
um, so that's why when we step on stage, it sounds like the record. And I was really so impressed. This is slightly different, but it's kind of the same too. Don Pullen, I played with Don Pullen for 3 years, and he was auditioning drummers. My friend, great alto saxophonist Vincent Herring, he called me and he says, "You know that guy you like, your piano player Don Pullen? He's auditioning drummers. You should call him." I said, "Well, I don't have his number." He said, "I got it. I'm going to give it to you." So he gave me the number. I called, and Don said, "No, I have a bunch of guys that I got, and I'm good." I was like, "Oh man, I can't even get a chance." Okay, so he went in, and he was still auditioning people, I guess, and he hadn't found by the end of the week. He hadn't found someone that he meshed with, that he liked.
Oh, wow.
So he called me back, and he says, Cindy, I'd like you to come down and audition. I said, "Really?" He said, "Yeah, I've been playing with drummers all week and I haven't found the person yet." He
Oh,
said, "And
wow.
I'd really like you to come down and give it a go." And I said, "Okay." And so, he says, "Well, do you know this song? You know that song?" I said, "I know all of them." Because he had just done a record with Tony Williams, and I learned all the music because I wanted to play with him. So I already knew the songs.
Nice.
All he had to do was count them off. I already knew the songs. And my main point, I'll make 2 points on this one. My main point is that as soon as he started playing, and this was a piano in a rehearsal space, but as soon as he started playing, it sounded just like the record.
Oh, wow.
I was floored because I just looked at him because I was like, wow, he's got the same exact touch. It's the same thing.
And you realized it was about the player at that moment,
About the
right?
person. It was about his hands. It was about those Don Pullen's hands. That turned on a light for me. And I've heard Tony say it's not about this or that. It's about my hands. My hands are doing it. And when Don did that at the audition, I was floored because it was all about his hands. So we make it sound, like what we produce us, we reproduce us, and so I always try to keep my same gear. If I don't play with the same stuff that I'm playing live, it's only because it's on tour
It's a
or
logistical issue, right?
there's some logistic reason.
Yeah.
What I might do sometimes is I might fool around with different snare drums. Like sometimes I'll play a Black Beauty, and sometimes I'll play a chrome drum. Sometimes I'll play something else. The Black Beauties I love, and they sound fantastic. It's like one of my favorite snare drums. But I don't play them with Santana live because they're too soft. Too soft sound. They don't sound big enough.
Yeah.
That band needs a big sound. So sometimes in the studio, I will play one because obviously a microphone is going to pick up all the beauty of that drum.
Yeah.
So that might be the only thing that I do switch around, but otherwise it's the same gear, that I play.
Yeah, that's great. I've been in those. I've seen those experiences where I know someone's music and I know their sound, and then I see whether it's in a book or magazine or whatever, and I see pictures of them recording in the studio, and it's totally like I never saw them with this gear before. It's a totally different thing, and I'm like, whoa, I had no idea. And but then there is also the, oh, no wonder it sounds so different, because the record has one sound and live was another sound, which is acceptable, but there's a magic to doing exactly what you and Carlos do. You use the same, you're gonna dress up in this outfit for photo shoot. Oh wow, she looks the same in real person. She's wearing the same outfit. It's kind of the
Right.
same thing,
Because
right?
you're just being you. You're
Yeah,
just being you. I want the sound that I'm hearing to translate, whether it's a record or whether it's, live. I want
right.
that sound to translate.
Exactly. Cool. Let me just see if there's any other questions. My 30th Santana concert. First one was 1971. That's before you and I were born, I think. Tom Holskla. Tom Holskla will be his 30th Santana concert. Wow.
Wow, Tom. Well, you have to try to come up front, and I'm gonna try to toss you some drumsticks. You have to let me know you're Tom, though.
Yeah.
Just put
That's
31st, get a sign or something, and write me. Put a big sign up or something. I'm gonna get you some
It's
drumsticks
gonna be
or a
40
t-shirt.
men and women with "I'm Tom" signs now.
Yeah,
You can make sure you have plenty of bricks of sticks. That's really cool, though. That's a hardcore fan right there. That's
yeah, that's
great.
awesome. That's a beautiful
Yeah,
thing. It says a lot for what Carlos is doing.
absolutely. Are you finishing, or rather starting from where you left off with your next record after the tour is over?
After the tour is over, yeah, I won't have time to do that prior
Yeah.
to the tour, so I'll have to do it
Any
after.
idea when we might expect a release on that?
By the time we start recording, it won't come out until 2023.
Okay.
Yeah.
Keep us posted on that, because I love the first one.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great, great. And you have something, if I remember right, don't you have something happening with the Percussive Art Society?
Yeah, a drum clinic.
Yeah. When is that?
That's I think it's the 31st of May. I think it is. I'll have it posted on my site. I think it's May
Okay.
31st.
That sounds
It's a
familiar. I saw something the other day. Yeah, so I wanted to ask you about it.
Yeah,
Great.
that's gonna be fun, and Carl and Paoli are on that too. They're playing together, and I'm
Nice.
doing a clinic on my own, and they're doing one together. So it's gonna be really exciting. It's gonna be riveting because they're. I heard them going through some stuff, and it was like, whoa, okay.
That's great. What are a
Yeah.
couple takeaways people could expect when they come to your portion of it?
I love, well, first of all, I like to do a lot of drumming, so I like to play a lot, but I also like to talk about, the lineage of the drums, some of the drum history, and I like to talk about master drummers. I love talking about my hero Tony Williams because he made so many contributions
Yeah.
to not only to the drumming world, but also to the music world, and also to just the world of innovation and creativity. As there aren't that many individuals who've graced this earth who have created it and actually innovated as much as he did. So that's also a person that I like to talk about a lot. And then I like to make it fun, so yeah, it's gonna be cool. It's gonna be fun.
That's great. And I see a hello from A.D. Adams. A.D. Adams is a very close friend of mine, lives in Phoenix. And amongst other projects and being a drum teacher, he's also the drummer for Louis Prima Jr. and the Witnesses. And
Awesome.
they put on an amazing show. And there's a great part where Louis Jr. goes back and plays the drums while AD is playing. And then AD stands up without skipping a beat. Louis Jr. slips in. AD comes out front and they do a rock medley of the Stones and all kinds of stuff with AD singing, and then they go back. It's great. It's a great show. It's a great show. AD, you got to send us your schedule. Enja and I want to come see you.
That's awesome. Congratulations, man. And thanks for saying hello.
Yeah. Cool. Well, now it's time for a Cindy Blackman Santana fun fact question. Ready?
I'm ready.
What is something that you'd be willing? What is something that you could tell us about yourself that people wouldn't know from knowing you from your musical background, reading Wikipedia, the program at a concert? What is something that they could learn about you that might surprise you, whether it's a hobby or guilty pleasure music you're into that they might not suspect, like being a huge Sex Pistols or Iron Maiden fan, or like what is something that people go, wow, really? Because I love breaking those stereotype molds that people are often put in when they're known for this, that, or the other thing, and then they find out, oh yeah, and he likes knitting too. Nothing wrong with that, but what a surprise, right?
Right. Me, I love archery.
There you go. Wow, that's great.
Yeah,
Another reason to not F with the drummer.
Exactly. I have a couple. I have a couple of two really great bows, and I was studying from a master archer, and he's really incredible. His form is just amazing. Wow. He's like, he's a petite guy with this really long red beard and mustache and this full head of like strawberry red hair.
Wow.
And he looks like he just stepped out of the woods of Ireland or somewhere. I mean, he's incredible. And I had my first bow, which was a beginner bow, and it's very light. And, I grew out of that bow, because I was practicing, and I went to him and I said, this bow is not doing it for me anymore. I think I've outgrown it. And he said, yeah, it's about that time. He said, well, take a look up there and tell me which bow you see that you like. And I said, I like that one. And he said, that's my bow. He said, that's my bow. And then I said, oh, really? And he said, yeah. He said, let me go in the back and see if I can replicate that for you. So he went in the back and he was trying to find, because he put that bow together himself. He customized the bow. I had no idea. I just liked that bow. It had everything that I wanted, and he couldn't find everything, but he said, you know what? I'm ready for a new bow, so I'll sell you my bow. So I got teacher's bow,
Wow, that's so cool. That's fascinating. Before we went on the air, I was telling you about the gentleman who wanted to blow up the tunnel. That guy. So he was really into archery, and he showed me some of his gear, and the technology was fascinating with the sights and the whole way of adjusting tension. And it's like, this is not a boing, there's a whole science to it, right? It was amazing.
Yeah, there is. I mean, I don't have a sight on my bow, and I am like a grassroots archer. I like the recurve bows.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think that really gives you a feel, because you really feel the bow. Yeah. With some others, you got to wear a glove, and it's little. Those are great, but especially if you're gonna be shooting, some game or something.
But you want a more tactile experience with it, right?
Yeah, I'm not gonna be, hunting down game or anything like that. Unless I have to. Right. But
how about an apple off someone's head?
Yeah, I don't even eat meat. I might hunt down some tomatoes or something. But that tomato.
That's so funny.
But yeah, it's amazing. It's it's a sport where you have to really focus. It does require the use of a couple of muscles that you might not use, so that's great for me too, because I like full body everything.
Yeah. Often that's also how we become familiar with muscles we didn't know we had.
Yeah, that's true. You do. Yeah, so it's great. I love archery. It's an amazing sport. So for me, that's I've been doing it now for probably, for about 4 years.
Nice.
Yeah. And
does it feel therapeutic for you?
It does. It's very relaxing. I can really focus, and I actually like to do that before I practice. If I'm going to do a long practicing session, a lot of times I'll go and I'll shoot some arrows because it really gets my focus on.
That's
You know,
great.
yeah, I like it a lot.
Great.
So that's something that now everybody knows. Nobody knew that before
Yeah,
because
I
I
love
was
that.
talking
Thanks for
about it.
sharing something so personal. That's great. One last question we'll take before we go from the audience, and it is from Donna Burnett Arnold. She says, "Hi, Cindy. Do you have a particular warm up you do before each show?" And she says, "Hey, Dan." Hey, Donna. Other than archery, I guess.
Better than archery. Well, like I can't go on shooting arrows, in the backstage. So
We're not
we don't
having
have that set
Santana
up.
back here at the forum.
Yeah, everybody would think I was crazy. You know, one of the main things that I do even before I pick up a stick is that I stretch.
Hmm.
I warm my body up first, because it's very easy to get injured.
Yeah.
So I warm up first. I warm myself up first, then I stretch. Um, and then I do, depending on how much time I have, I may just do some singles, or I may do Alan Dawson's rudimental ritual.
Oh, nice.
And even if I don't have time to do all the 11 pages, I'll do as many pages as I have time for, just to warm up with that.
Yeah.
But just in general, whatever your favorite rudiments are, or rudiments to me that turn around so that each hand has a chance at being the lead, so
Right.
that you even out your hands before you play. I like doing that. I like doing singles and doubles. Yeah, that's basically what I do. And then
That's
I
good.
take, I put the sticks down, and I take a few minutes to kind of uh, meditate,
Hmm.
just to get my focus happening.
That's
And
great.
that's basically my routine before playing.
Great. Thanks. Great question, Laura. Donna, sorry.
Yeah, great question.
Thanks everybody for joining myself with Cindy Blackman Santana here on Drum Talk TV. Go out, see them on tour. Go see them if you're near Vegas or want to get to Vegas the 17th through the 29th of May. You may see my wife Enja and myself at one of those shows, if we can hide from all the kids and grandkids long enough. And Cindy, thank you so much. Hang on the line after we disconnect from the live. And thanks again, everybody. Really appreciate you following what we do.
Thanks, everybody.